Hello and welcome back to Green Mountain Mornings on KBT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. It is 22 minutes past the hour. I'm your host, Olga Peters. And welcome back to the show, Randy Holhut from the Commons. Hello, Randy.
Everybody again. Hi, Joyce again.
And hello again, Joyce. And I also want to remind listeners that this segment of Green Mountain Mornings is being filmed by Brattleboro Community Television. It will be online later at brattleboro.tv. And broadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. So Randy and I were having a conversation off mic, and Randy, I'd like to circle back to it about opiates. And we recently had Congressman Peter Welch came and met with a number of leaders in the community to talk about opiates. But you were also talking about an article, was it in the New York Times?
Yes.
About opiates.
Yes, that libraries around the country being concerned about their patrons shooting up and overdosing, and debating the use of Narcan in their training the librarians in doing that. I'm not sure whether any of Star Electronica's staff at the Brooks Library have trained for that, but you know, those are the type of things that really give you pause. I mean, library. It's not a back alley, you know, where you're shooting up with dirty needles. It's not. It's a library, but you know that you think of libraries as a sacred sanctuary, and that sacred sanctuary has been broken. You know, like in the past few days, here at least in New England, librarians have been really shook up by that a stabbing that took place in Winchester, Massachusetts on Saturday. You know, a girl who was just there studying, getting stabbed to death by somebody who was slightly deranged. I guess the saving grace there was it was a knife and not an AR-15. But still, shattering the sense of safety, calm, and normality.
Well, we're turning our public spaces, and I say we because I really feel that we as Americans are doing this to ourselves. We can't blame anyone else as much as we would like to try.
Yeah.
We are turning our public spaces, our libraries, our schools, our churches, our movie theaters, our concerts, into war zones.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, at least for me.
Well, the fact that you can scarcely go anywhere without, you know, having metal detectors or have your bag searched or being told you can't take a bag bigger than this, or the frustration that gets felt over having, you know, your rights chipped away little by little. But you know, the normal reaction to, you know, something like this, you know, you heard President Trump saying earlier this week that we ought to give the death penalty to drug dealers. Actually taking a page from the Philippines, where they just execute them on the street.
Right.
But you know, Cadet Bone Spurs likes to talk tough, but he wouldn't actually kill people like, you know, the president of the Philippines likes to brag he has.
I'm not sure that is the solution we're looking for.
No, we're not. I mean, you're looking for, you know, the squeamish part that people deal with opiates is risk management. You know, making sure people have, if they're still using, they have access to clean needles and a space where they can use and safely. Because the problems start, and you know why there's such a boom in using Narcan among the emergency responders is that you're not sure of what you're shooting up. You're not sure if it's quality, and now, you know, fentanyl seeping into the supply,
right?
And other things. The methadone that you get at Habit Opco in Brattleboro or some of the other clinics around New England, you know, it's just trying to get into those programs.
And to make sure that once someone seeks treatment, they're able to follow it through.
And you know, it's not instant, you know, bibbly bobbly boo. You're no longer a drug addict. And the work that, say, Turning Point down on Flat Street does is tremendous. There's a lot of peer-to-peer counseling.
Right.
Our old friend Jed Pop was, and that's Taryn Heon's front page story in this week's paper about talking about what that meant to him, that it helped get him clean, and then his experience is being used to get others clean.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a multi-pronged approach, but it's kind of sad to think that our country, as our life expectancy is starting to go decrease among other peer countries in the industrialized world. And one of the reasons why it's decreasing is because of drug use.
Right.
And why heroin has become and opioids have become the drug of choice in America now for, is American life that bad that you have to be that you need heroin to get through it?
Well, I had Superintendent Lyle Holliday in the studio yesterday, and we were talking about many of the challenges that teachers are dealing with. And I said, I know every situation is unique, but do you have a core issue that's driving a lot of these challenges? And she's like, drugs. She didn't even hesitate. She's like, drugs.
Yeah.
And it's seeping into every segment of our community.
And it's not just illegal stuff; it's illegal stuff too. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. So Randy and I have to go to a break, but we'll try to kind of circle back to this issue and talk about what's next in the next segment. And yes, you are listening to Green Mountain Mornings on KBT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters, and according to the liner guy, the purpose of the show depends on how caffeinated I am. I'm not caffeinated enough this morning. Randy, are you having your coffee?
Oh, I've already downed my ration for the morning to get me through.
And yes, and as we speak about legal crutches like caffeine, I just want to tie up our conversation on opiates because, as I mentioned, Congressman Peter Welch had met with a number of community leaders on opiates in the Windham County communities. We've been talking about opiates a lot. Was there any funding to come out of this conversation? Was there any new action to come out of this conversation?
No, there was not.
Okay.
I mean, it was the same thing of, yes, there's a problem. Yeah, we're trying to do things about it, but, well, good luck. Doing a good job.
Yeah.
And, and it's falling to the towns to do it. And the town response, the police, the schools, the social service agencies locally, I mean, they're doing the best they can with what they have, but you still have those nightmare days like that, the 4th of July last year, where you had almost a dozen overdoses in one day.
Right.
And I forget the exact number, but it was a lot. And how do you deal with that with limited resources? And that question still is out there because it's easy to talk about. Oh, we need to do something, but when it comes time to actually put up money, well, they shuffle your feet and look at the ground.
Right, and towns traditionally their job was to ensure public safety, fix potholes, put out fires, conduct rehab sessions was not necessarily part of their remit.
Any more than keeping people from freezing to death on sidewalks.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's hoping that some new funding or programs will come our way, and here's a huge thank you to the people who already are working on this issue. Let's just kind of shift gears into town meeting day.
Yes, the annual Festival of Democracy.
I like that. I like that very much.
Okay, well, we've been on page A4 and A5 of your comments today, if you have it. There's I had to crash out of that whole roundup with a little bit of help from Wendy of that. There are some mistakes in here, so I'll take this time to give you the errata to the roundup.
Okay,
I have the wrong dates for Vernon. That the voting takes place on March 5th, and then the second night is March 7th. No, it is right in there. Okay, March 5th is the town meeting starts, and voting takes place on the 6th. Okay, that's right. Williamsville I had wrong. They're meeting at the Union Hall rather than Williamsville Hall. So if you're going to Newfane Town meeting at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, it is at Union Hall in Dummerston Village. And any other errata that if you're a Commons reader and you're town clerk and you've noticed that, hey, this isn't right, give us a call and we'll correct it in the online edition at 246-6397. Or email us at news@commonsnews.org.
So it's not too late. If there are mistakes, we can still fix them.
Well, it's getting to be too late, but it's a tremendous undertaking, and thankfully a lot of the towns have posted their agendas online. Mm-hmm. There's still a few holdouts. I'm looking at you, Athens and Wardsboro.
And Vernon.
Because you don't believe in having websites because you think it's too hard.
Oh, and Townsend.
Or it's too legally difficult to comply, but we managed to get information from those places, too, or most of those places.
Good.
And it's just a big undertaking to try and do this, especially, we don't have a large news staff at the Commons right now. Mm-hmm. And, town meeting day kind of calls for all the resources to be called out, so then we try to do what we can when we can.
Well, it is a great spread, and it's a really great comprehensive look at town meeting. This morning, in one of my breaks, I highlighted some of the things that looked interesting, but what for you, Randy, stood out for this year?
Well, there wasn't an awful lot. There's no school consolidations. Last year that was the big thing on the budget, especially in the Deerfield and West River valleys. Mm-hmm. Now it's kind of tying up the loose ends for the new River Valley School District, the one with Wardsboro and Dover.
Yeah.
And some of the jumps in school spending were surprising, like that how towns have cut their spending, but their per pupil spending still went up.
Right.
Like Athens went up 20%.
Oh.
But they cut their spending.
Boy, I tell you, Act 60, the economic portion of it still boggles my mind. Is this some of these jumps in school spending? I don't know if you know the answer to this, but has the state gone through and just changed student numbers on people like they did for BUHS?
I think that's part of it, like, looking at Jamaica. But for most towns, it seems like the average amount for the per pupil spending is up to around is in the $16,000 to $17,000 range. Mm-hmm. And it's still figuring out what you're going to be spending on schools and how much. And it seems like the more you actually, the spending with that. If I sound incoherent on this, it's that the school funding formula is so totally whacked.
It's almost incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think Frank Rucker is the only person who understands it.
But like Vernon's school spending's down to like their budget they're approving is 15,300 per equalized pupil, and that's about 8% lower than last year. I'm not sure if that's reflective of them not being part of the BUHS anymore.
It is. Yep. Yeah, I spoke to Hebert about this, Mike Hebert, and with Vernon, because they're no longer part of BUHS, their high school students are now considered part of their overall student population, where before it was their high school students were considered part of BUHS's population.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to anyone.
Or here in Dummerston, where the school spending's of almost 3,000. Let's take that back, 3 million overall, and our pupil spending is $17,802 per pupil. Yet that's 1/3% lower than than the current year.
Right.
So we're spending more, but it's lower, while other towns are spending more and it's higher.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the convoluted formula of school funding. But for the most part, the town budgets are pretty lean, and towns are not going crazy with spending. They're holding the line as best as they can.
Mm-hmm. I have one question. I don't know if you can answer this, but I noticed this morning that in Guilford, voters are deciding whether the town should continue its membership in the Windham Regional Commission. Is that something towns do every year? And Guilford has just put it on its ballot, or is there something else going on that I don't know?
I haven't frankly paid a lot of attention to that, but I'm not sure if this is the same kind of sentiment that caused them to help Brattleboro blow up the Windham Solid Waste Management District.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Of what do we need Windham Regional for? What do they do for us?
Could be.
And people who say things like that are totally unfamiliar to what Windham Regional does, and it seems like the only people that really appreciate Windham Regional are town planners and reporters.
I know, that's because they put out lots of data, county-wide data and town-specific data. That's so useful to reporters, at least.
Yeah, and that they have their fingers in a lot of different pies, and of course Chris Campany, the executive director of Windham Regional, is a guy that you can have a conversation with in 5 minutes, and you can walk away with 3 stories.
Mm-hmm.
And he's happy to share information and get it out, and it's an underappreciated resource, Windham Regional, because of all the work they do, and for an overworked part-time town select boards and planning commissions.
This could just be something on the ballot that Guilford puts on the ballot every year, and it's just kind of they turn it over to the voters and let voters decide. It's like the Sevids money, perhaps. Or it could be a new development. Since we don't know at this time, I will do my best to find out for folks next week. How about anything else town meeting related, Randy?
Well, we don't know about the town meeting luncheons. We know that that whether the top of the hill grill smoker will be at Union Hall for the Newfane town meeting, as it usually is.
Uh-huh.
Or whether they've changed the potato salad recipe in Guilford. That was a source of controversy a couple of years ago.
I know Dummerston's serving lunch.
Yeah, they always do that. They reuse that picture I took a few years ago of all the slices of pie out there.
Yep.
I mean, granted, they were price chopper pies, but
hey,
still,
pie's pie.
Pie is pie, and but the macaroni and cheese and ham is homemade. So, but a nice starchy meal for the second half of town meeting when you're nodding off through the articles.
Yeah, they should probably just forego lunch and just give everybody coffee.
Well, some people never get around to lunch. I mean, like Stratton always has the fastest town meeting in Windham County. They're usually in and out in a half hour.
Yeah.
Of course, Stratton only has 300 people in it, so it's easy to get through the meeting, even with voting for your town officers from the floor, like some of our towns do.
Mm-hmm.
And others are kind of marathonish, depending on how many topics there are to take up. I mean, Marlboro likes to likes to hear itself talk. Dummerston can get a little windy too at the times.
Sometimes, yes.
And Newfane. But it's always one of those difficult days, nights, because for us, town meeting happens right on deadline for us,
mm-hmm.
and that means a long, 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 hard night's day for us.
But we're kind of joking about like town lunches and articles and such, but it is an important part of our culture as Vermonters.
Very much so. Even though so much of it has been eroded by state and federal mandates, so there's not as much wiggle room for a town to decide how it's going to use its money. The idea of citizens gathering together in a common space to debate how the town should be run, what are its priorities, and what kind of town it wants to be. It's a very, very New England thing. Town meeting is not found beyond our borders, and the fact that people still have a say, even if it's a limited one, in how things are run, is a good example for the rest of the country to follow, to check out and maybe emulate.
I agree. And on that note, Randy and I have to wrap up for this morning, but looking forward to all the town meeting coverage next week.